We wanted the state-run institutes to closely monitor and work with the entrepreneurs so that they can do a hand-holding exercise. EDI, the Entrepreneurship Development Institute, which is the most premier institution in India in terms of promoting entrepreneurship. Good morning and welcome to the second session in Entrepreneurship and Small Business Management in Unit 2, where we are going to speak about the institutions, the government institutions offering the EDP program. This is in continuation with the EDP program itself, as in how the training is being done by various institutes across India. Now, the government and financial institutions have started thinking to develop entrepreneurship in country through the training program, and this has been a long-term objective by the government of India, trying to understand the various factors, and they want to go ahead and give this association, they want to give this chance to everybody in the country who have to do onto the entrepreneurship. Now, the second thing is that it was the Gujarat Industrial Investment Corporation, the GIIC, which was the first time it started a 3-month training program in entrepreneurship in 1970. No doubt about it, that's one of the reasons Gujarat is one of the highly industrialized state in India, and they have made a great amount of progress in terms of business and in terms of trade. Now, why this training program is very, very essential is because if you start looking into the training aspect, if you start looking into the curriculum development and the entrepreneurship program, the necessity from the government side was to push the youngsters who can get into this training and who can learn better and who can be able to develop their own business, own ideas altogether. But what was lacking in India was that we did not have enough people or institutions who could take up this training, and there was not much of state-run sponsored programs which can develop these kind of activities. So after the state of Gujarat taking the initiative way back in 1970, the government institutions also started coming up in this particular field, and now we are seeing a lot of activities that has been happening altogether. Now, the thing here is that let's look into the objectives first and try to understand this program. The first objective was to the establishment of small-scale industries or enterprises with its management to earn profits. By the later half in the 1970s, the news of GIIC's EDP spread to other places. What was the objective of the Gujarat Industrial Corporation altogether was that they wanted to come up with a program typically trying to address the small-scale enterprises. Now, if you look into the state of Gujarat, there are a lot of home-based industries, cottage industries, small-scale industries, which are involved in textiles, which are involved in jewelry, which are involved in the diamond cutting and polishing. There are a lot of small-scale industries which are involved in handicraft, arts, and so many other factors. But then at that point of time, Gujarat state identified this factor that we need to bring the small scale industries into the larger picture, into the economic growth cycle altogether. And we have to devise a program so that the management of these industries as well as the growth, the objectives would be taken into account. So that's why what we tend to do here is that we started building up this program in a positive manner, in a growth-oriented manner, and we started developing it altogether. So that's why you see that there has been a great amount of development altogether. Followed by what we also did is that the first step forward, what we wanted to do is a major initiative to foster economic development in the northeastern part of India took place with the establishment of the NEC, the Northeastern Council, in 1972. Main objective was to promote economic development of the NER and the interstate plans to bring it to the mainstream of the country. So the northeastern region of India, as most of us know that, this segment was completely ignored for a very long time. The amount of importance that was given to the state of Maharashtra, Gujarat, Haryana, or to the state of Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, the same amount of importance was not given to the northeastern states. So if you look back way back in 1972, there was a council that was established to bring the northeastern states back into the mainframe. But after 1970, still about the late 2000, we don't see much of inclusion that have happened. Why? Because most of these areas were troubled by their own political as well as the interstate problems that they had in between. But nevertheless, the initiative was taken in 1972 itself. So what we look here on a brighter prospect, on on the right side, on the positive side altogether, is that we were able to establish a better platform, a better growth cycle altogether. So that's why I would say that the first step forward, that's the first initiative that was taken up by the system itself in terms of developing it and taking it forward. Now, the next thing is that there is a great matter of satisfaction in NEC since it has been seriously involved in the regional development. Now, let me bring you into the light. The picture here is that when you look into the state of Assam, which is known for its tea products altogether, this has been always a world pride for us, saying that the Assam tea altogether. But then there's not been much of importance that was given at that point of time in terms of improving the quality of lifestyle for the hill tribes and the northeastern states altogether. But here, when I start looking in terms of the NEC after the 1972-73, there has been an involvement. We have been trying to push in terms of development, in terms of other activities altogether. Today, if you see on the current cycle, on the current year, the northeastern states have also equally developed themselves into different aspects, into different growth cycles altogether. Now, the most of the serious concern here is the economic backwardness of the region. Over the last 10 or 15 years, you might have seen a lot of migration happening from the northeastern region to that of south or to the other parts of India. That was quite obvious because that particular centers have been only looked as tourism hotspots, but they were never looked as industrial growth centers or industrial growth hubs altogether. Now, when you look into the states of Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, or when you start looking into Sikkim, these states and Nagaland also included, these states were not given the prominence of an industrial development hub. In fact, the railway connectivity or the road transport also did not pick up very much. But of late, in the last about 6 to 7 years, you are able to see that the northeastern states have also become quite connected, and now things have started up in a great manner for them. So the first step that we have taken here is to integrate India as a common hub of manufacturing, trying to bring in as far as connectivity so that everybody is interested, everybody is able to go forward and bring in a better development situation altogether. Now, the other thing is that the state-run centers that we are talking about, now when you look into the integrated entrepreneurship development model, the plans were evolved on SIET's experience. The realization on entrepreneurship development is a multi-ordinary task and a long-range plan should be executed there. Why am I bringing this factor is that every state, now let's talk about Karnataka itself. The state of Karnataka started booming in terms of growth because of the introduction towards the information technology. Right from the year 1996 onwards, when IT started taking a center stage in Karnataka, automatically Bangalore started gaining the status of becoming the Silicon Valley of India. Now, that was one of the major strides, or a rapid stride, I would like to say, where Karnataka started becoming a center of importance in the global map altogether. But this was not true for every other state in India, except for a few states like Andhra Pradesh or Tamil Nadu, which also started getting equal importance or a share in the IT sector. The other states of India were not getting that prominence. But of course, their prominence, their ideology, their thinking was more on the other sectors. Now, for example, when you start looking into the state of Kerala, when Trivandrum started introducing the concept of the IT centers or the IT parks altogether, slowly companies started coming there and they also started growing up. But nevertheless, if you start seeing here, the state-run centers were very, very few. So the integration of a state-run center to come into entrepreneurship and start building up a better range, a better scale of operation, a better growth center altogether was definitely needed. So what we wanted the state-run entrepreneurship institutes is that let them get integrated with the state activity, develop and grow forward. And they always thought that the state-run entrepreneurship activity is of a great prominence, great support altogether. So what they wanted to do is that bring in an orchestrated institutional support, help all those small institutes, small development centers with new ideas, with better concepts altogether so that they can grow forward and build in something bigger. Now, the next thing that we are seeing here is that the integrated model of entrepreneurship development that was proposed by the SIET included in 5 main components, namely the local organization to initiate support potential entrepreneurs till the break-even stage, interdisciplinary approach, strong information support that was needed, training as an important intervention for the entrepreneurial development, monitoring and evaluation, and also on the institutional financing. Though these things look almost similar, these things look quite common to us, what is important here is that we wanted the state-run institutes to closely monitor and work with the entrepreneurs so that they can do a hand-holding exercise for some time in terms of making the entrepreneurs reach till the stage of break-even. Most of the entrepreneurs will require some sort of guidance, some sort of mechanism through which the state will be able to provide them a better opportunity for growth altogether. Secondly, we also felt that the interdisciplinary approach, if the state-run corporations could bring in experts from the different factors, from the different walks of life, who could provide their valuable experience and knowledge in terms of developing these institutes and providing them a better approach, a better thought process, the strong information support. Now, we were highly involved in terms of the data analytics and the cloud support business from a long time these days. And when we talk about this information factor altogether, the collection of information, because for an entrepreneur, let me tell you, when he wants to start business, the right kind of information support, the right kind of push that is needed in terms of setting up the business, where you will get the finance, what kind of people are you looking into, what are the necessary formalities, the basic level documentation and support in terms has to be provided. So the state government also needed to give a lot of emphasis there. Followed by training being a very, very important factor. We wanted that intervention to happen on a regular basis, and all the members of the institute should undergo a training process. They should not be left alone. They should not be taught that, okay, training will happen on a separate phase and it is not mandatory for all of us to undergo training. Rather, we wanted the training to become a regular activity in the organization. So we felt that this is mandatory, this is needed for all of us, and that's why we went into the factors of training and institutional financing. With the state-run institutes coming up, and when they start promoting this activity, even the state government banks, the cooperatives will come forward and they will in turn start providing a better support, a better knowledge, a better ideology and a platform altogether. So we had all these factors in the mind when we are talking about the state-run centers, and we wanted every single activity to be embedded, to be linked, so that the development of the economy will also be as smooth as silk. Now, let's move further in terms of the expansion plans. When we are talking about the expansion plans, the CED Ahmedabad, the institutes, and joining hands with institutions like IDBI, IFCI, and the ICICI SBI, all this wanted to come forward and start a government-sponsored nation resource organization called as the EDI, the Entrepreneurship Development Institute, which is the most premier institution in India in terms of promoting entrepreneurship. This was started in the year 1983 in Ahmedabad. This is definitely a very big milestone in the history of India in terms of promoting entrepreneurship. So definitely, I would say that this institute has been doing a fantastic job in terms of promoting the entrepreneurs with the necessary skills, ideas, and thought process that has been helping the young entrepreneurs achieve what they exactly wanted. The second thing is that the institute was entrusted with the responsibility of extension and institutionalization of the entrepreneurship. So when I talk about this word called as the institutionalization, what I'm trying to say here is that they wanted the development to be on a composite manner. Now, that is very, very important, and the institute has been very successful in terms of discharging their duties. The EDI was not a normal institute like a school or a college, but rather the EDI was an institute which was closely associated with each and every entrepreneur who are a part of the system and who understands the system very well. Most of them, they think that entrepreneurship and training are two separate wings. But for the EDI, what happens is that the training is a regular activity altogether. They are closely interlinked. They want to be associated in terms of growth. They want to be associated in terms of the development as well as the training factor. So that's where you see a trilogy here in terms of connecting people, connecting the growth altogether. Why? Because if you're just concerned about the theoretical knowledge that is available, entrepreneurship is quite easy to talk. But then if you're trying to connect people with the practical hands-on experience, then that becomes a challenge. So what the concept that lied behind in terms of the EDI was to connect people with their plan of action so that the entrepreneurship training becomes even more effective in nature. Followed by the expansion plans. When the EDI started in 1983, the government established National Institute of Entrepreneurship and Small Business Development in order to coordinate with it. So this was an ancillary work that was taken up by the government of India to make the importance of entrepreneurship reach each and every corner of India, which is a very, very important aspect, I would like to say. Why? Because EDI was not just functioning as a standalone institute, but there were several people who were associated with the EDI. They were trying to understand the growth process and the familiarity. Followed by the development of EDP institutes. So there was a national and a state level center that was developed, and what we wanted is a closer coordination between the national level centers and the state centers so that entrepreneurship gets integrated at all levels possible. By now, there are 12 states: Bihar, Goa, Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh, Jammu Kashmir, Karnataka, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, and Uttar Pradesh have established either a central development or the IED, which is called as the Institute of Entrepreneurship Development, and they have seen a lot of successful institutes and companies coming up because of that. Now, if you look into the state of Uttar Pradesh, which is recently being honored with so much of achievements, and they have really come forward in terms of development, and Odisha, not to forget, being one of the fastest development state in terms of the business and trade affairs. This has really gone up to a very great extent. I would also like to mention about Andhra Pradesh and state of Telangana, which has got the award of the sunrise or the sunshine state altogether, because being the fastest state in terms of implementing and getting a business run with the least amount of documentation. These are all been possible. Why? Because the need for entrepreneurship being correctly recognized and pushed by the government with the coordination of the these state-run institutes, which has been able to promote a lot of successful growth. So overall, when you see the development of this EDP Institute, these are all institutes which are closely connected, working hands-on, and trying to develop the country on a whole basis. So this is definitely a very great leap forward of faith and leap forward of growth altogether. Now, the development of EDP institutes, we have been able to see that about 686 organizations are involved in conducting EDP, and they have been successful in enlightening people across India. Just imagine the size, about 700 odd institutions and organizations joining hands to enlighten people, to tell them how exactly entrepreneurship has to be looked in, what are all the different factors, the features. So this is something not just a one-day journey or not just a one-time destination, but this keeps on going, where you see hundreds of programs that have been developed forward. With this, I come to the conclusion of this particular session. I hope and believe that all the contents that have been spoken through this session will be of a great help and resource to you. In the upcoming sessions, we shall be seeing more about the different factors of the entrepreneurship, the need and the development of it. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.